In this video, I'll be showing you how to factor by grouping. So anytime you have four terms, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be factoring by grouping. Now it's possible you could factor out a GCF from the four terms, but normally we don't need to do that. So see four terms, normally you're going to factor by grouping. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to do this. So if you look at number one, what we're going to do is group the first two terms, and now we're going to factor out the GCF. So for x cubed and 2x squared, it would be the smaller of the two powers, which is x squared. So that's my greatest common factor. And so now we're basically doing the distributive property in reverse. What times x squared gives you x cubed? Well, let's see, that would be x. And then what times x squared would give you 2x squared? That would be 2. And so we have x squared times the quantity x plus 2. And so now we look at the second two terms, and we're going to group those. And if we factor out the GCF here, it would be 5. And it would be 5 times, let's see, 5 times x plus 2. Now, that 5 should be positive, so we want to put a plus in between here. And so now what we have is something that's equivalent to the previous line, but now we've factored out GCF in the first two terms and the last two terms. Now what we have here are two terms, and in each of the two terms we have a factor of x plus 2. So here we have x plus 2 times x squared. And here we have x plus 2 times 5. So our GCF is x plus 2. And so now first we look at our first term and we ask ourselves, what times x plus 2 gives us that first term? Well, that would be x squared. And then we look at the second term, and what times x plus 2 gives us that term? Well, we need the 5. And so our final answer here is the quantity x plus 2 times the quantity x squared plus 5. And in fact, remember, the opposite of factoring would be multiplying. If you multiplied this out, you would get what you started with. All right, let's go ahead and do another one and see if you get the hang of this. So on number 2, for the first two terms, you can see our greatest common factor is just going to be y. Y times x will give you the xy, and y times 1 will give you the y. In the second two terms, our GCF is 2, and it will be 2 times x plus 1. And again, we're going to have a positive in the middle. And so we have two terms with a common factor of x plus 1. And again, you can see x plus 1 times something is this first term. I need a y. And then x squared, or x plus 1 times something is that second term. Well, I'm missing the 2, so plus 2. And so we get x plus 1 times y plus 2. Now I want to show you something. Notice if I cancel out the x plus 1s, or sometimes I'll just put my finger over those, you can see what we're left with is y plus 2. So that's kind of a short way to get your other factor, a little shortcut. All right, so if you think you've got this, you might want to try the next four problems and then watch the videos. Or video. All right, so let's see how you did here. The GCF would be 5x squared, and it's going to be 5x squared times 2x gives you the 10x cubed, and 5x squared times a minus 5 will give you the minus 25x squared. Now, one of the things you may or may not have noticed is when we factor out our first two terms and our last two terms, we're always getting the same thing inside of the parentheses. Notice here we got x plus 1, and here we got x plus 2. In fact, we couldn't go to our last step if we didn't have the same thing in the parentheses, because that was our greatest common factor. And so the nice thing about factoring by grouping is if you do the first part correctly, then you know what to expect on when you factor the last two terms. So here I'm expecting to get a factor of 2x minus 5. So that means I need to multiply times 2. And so we've got a common factor of 2x minus 5 times 5x squared plus 2. All right, let's look at number 4. So when we factor the first two terms, we can factor out a 3t squared. Be sure that that's a t squared. And so that's going to be times 2t plus 1. And then now when we factor the second binomial here, we're expecting to get a 2t plus 1 factor. So what are we going to multiply by? Well, that's just going to be 1 here. And so our GCF is 2t plus 1. And you can see that we're going to have that times 3t squared plus 1. All right, on number 5, we'll factor out a y squared in the first two terms times y plus 4. So when we factor these two terms, we expect to get a y plus 4 factor. And I need to multiply by a minus 2 here, so watch your sign there. And so we're going to have y plus 4 as our common factor. Let's see, times y squared minus 2. And so that's number 5. And let's look at number 6 here. We can factor out a 5 and an a from the first two terms. So it'll be 5a times 4a minus b. And so I'm expecting to get a 4a minus b when I factor the last two terms. And you can see I need to multiply by 2c here. Notice 2c times 4a gives me the 8ac. And 2c times a minus b gives me the minus 2bc. And so we're going to get a common factor of 4a minus b times 5a plus 2c. And so that is how you factor by grouping, and that's going to be a very important thing to know how to do as we move into factoring trinomials. And that's it for this video.